Hello students, in our last video we learned the poem Don't Give Up. Today we will learn our next lesson, that is unit 1.2. Before we begin our next lesson, I'll ask you a very easy question. Tell me the names of some Mughal emperors. Yes, Akbar, Birbal, Aurangzeb, Shah Jahan, etc. were the names of some Mughal emperors. Here, students, in this lesson, we will learn about a very interesting story of Akbar and Birbal. Akbar was very great king, and he is known as a very famous king, and he had got a vast empire also. And in his kingdom, in his court, there were 9 gems. The meaning of James means extraordinary people. In his court, there were 9 extraordinary people, means they were expert. Some of them were expert in science, some of them were expert in culture, some of them were expert in writing. So they all were extraordinary people. And among all 9 James, Birbal is well known. He was very closest to Emperor's heart. We will learn 2 funny stories between Akbar and Birbal in the lesson Who is the Greatest. Students, I will first narrate the story and give the meaning of new words. You all have to listen carefully and note down the meanings. Emperor Akbar or Akbar the Great is known as one of the greatest rulers in the world. Not just because he had a vast empire, a very strong army, untold wealth, but because he was a good human being. He cared for his subjects. Subjects means people. He had great respect for scholars, writers, poets, and artists belonging to different religions. He was a patron of art and culture. Patron means lover, fond, respect. The 9 gems or Navratnas in his court were very famous. Many people believed that of these 9 gems, Birbal was the closest to emperor's heart. Akbar loved to pose interesting questions or problems in his court, and Birbal never failed to come up with an equally interesting answer. Next paragraph. We don't know whether all the Akbar and Birbal stories that we hear today have any basis in history. They have been handed down over generations mainly by word of mouth. Here are 2 of them. One day, the emperor entered the court with a very serious expression on his face. As soon as he seated, he said, "I have a question for all of you. What should be the punishment for someone who pulls my moustache?" The court was stunned. Pull the emperor's moustache? It was unheard of. "Flog him! Give him 50 lashes of the whip!" exclaimed one nobleman. "That's not enough. Put him in jail without food and water," said another. "Whip him, beat him up, hang him, cut off his offending hands." The agitated courtiers began to cry out. Only Birbal was silent. He was even smiling a little. "What do you say, Birbal? What is your opinion?" "In my opinion, O giver of peace to the world, the offender should be given his favorite sweetmeats." "Raja Birbal, are you out of your mind? Give sweetmeats for such a grave offense?" the courtiers began to say. Birbal smiled and offered an explanation. Yes, who would be bold as to pull the emperor's moustache? only his grandson. When Akbar heard this, he burst out laughing because that is exactly what had happened in the morning. On another occasion, Akbar was relaxing with some of his courtiers. A few of them thought this was a good opportunity to shower praise on the emperor and get some favors for him. They began to compete with each other in praising Akbar. You are the greatest of the kings. You are the greatest of the king or emperors that ever lived on the earth. You are the greatest of all the people in the heaven or the earth. You are as great as God Almighty. You are greater than God Almighty. Now Akbar was no fool. He did not care for false praise. He stopped the courtiers and asked, "Do you all believe so?" Yes, they answered in one voice. All right, then prove it to me. Tell me at least one thing that I can do, but God Almighty will not be able to do. Otherwise, you will all incur our royal displeasure. Just write down the meaning of incur. Incur means make angry. You have till tomorrow morning to prove it. Akbar then left the place without another look at the courtiers. They were in proper fix. They thought and thought, but couldn't of any such thing. In the end, they went to Babel. When Babel heard their story, he told them not to worry. The next morning, the court was full. Everyone was curious to see that what would happen next. Well, said the emperor, have you found a good answer to my question? Are you ready to leave the court forever? Just then Birbal stepped forward and bowed low. Bowed means spoken slowly. Please don't be angry with those who think you are the greatest. There is certainly at least one thing that you can do, but the God Almighty cannot. Akbar looked at Birbal thoughtfully. And what is that one thing? When you want to punish someone, you can banish that person. Banish means send away out of court. To remove out of court. You can throw him out of your kingdom. But God's kingdom extends everywhere. The Almighty cannot banish anyone from his kingdom. Akbar's face was lit up with a smile. That was very clever, Birbal. While showing how I have an advantage, you have also shown that God is greater. I believe you. Akbar was so pleased with the answer that he forgave the courtiers for their stupidity. Forgive means stop feeling angry. Stop feeling angry. And stupidity means for stupid things, wrong things. Now children, I will explain this lesson in a short summary. You all pay attention here. See, as I told you that this is a story. In this lesson there are two stories between Akbar and Birbal. Both the stories are very funny. See, it is given in the first paragraph that Akbar was very famous. He was very well known, very great king. Not because he had a strong army or wealth, but he was a very good human being and he loved for his subjects. And in his court, 9 gems were there, and among them, Birbal was very closest to Akbar. Many stories of Akbar and Birbal are well known, but in the history, their stories are not written. So we can say that the stories of Akbar and Birbal have passed by word of mouth from one generation to another. Among all these stories, two stories are given here in our lesson. One story is that one day what happened, Akbar entered to his court in a very angry face. He just seated and asked a question to his courtiers that what will be the punishment for someone who pulls my mouse stick. Meaning of mouse stick means what? That hair that man grows above his upper lip. Hair that man grows above his upper lip. That is called mouse stick. So Akbar asks that if someone pulls my mouse stick, what will be the punishment for this mistake, for this mischievous? The people got shocked by listening this. Somebody said that flog him. Somebody said give him 50 lashes of the whip, beat him or put him in the jail or hang him, cut off his offending hands. So these were the reply of the courtiers. But Birbal was very silent. He was silently listening the courtiers' advices, their advices of punishment. Then Akbar asked Birbal, Birbal, what is your opinion then? You are not telling anything. You are not advising me any punishment to the person. Birbal was still smiling and he said that for his punishment, give him his favorite sweetmeats. Then all the peoples in the courtiers asked, have you gone mad, Birbal? For this great offense, you will give him sweetmeats? Birbal said yes, because the daring of pulling Akbar's mouse stick is not a easy job. It is a very great job, and that job can be done only by Akbar's grandson. So he should be given not punishment but his favorite sweetmeats. Then Akbar smiled because that only happened in the morning. Akbar's grandson only had pulled Akbar's sweetmeats. Another story is about one day Akbar was relaxing in the court. All 9 gems thought that this is a very good time to praise emperor and get his favors. अकबर की प्रेज करके उनका फेवर हम ले सकते हैं. This is a very good time. So they all began to praise Akbar. Somebody said, you are the greatest king. Somebody said, you are the greatest king on the earth. Somebody said that you are as great as Almighty. Somebody said that you are greater than Almighty also. Akbar thought that okay, if I am great from Almighty also, from God Almighty also, okay, you prove it by telling me one thing which I can do but God Almighty cannot do. And you have the time till tomorrow. If you will not give the answer of my question, you all will be removed from my court. You all will be removed from all the royal places. Akbar then left from the court. People began to think what will be the answer of Akbar's questions. Then finally all the courtiers went to Birbal. You only suggest the answer of emperor's question. Birbal heard their story and then told them that not to worry, we will see next morning. Next morning came. Emperor asked that, have you got the answer of my question, or you should leave my court? Then Birbal stepped forward and said, yes sir, don't be angry. I have got the answer of your question. One thing is there which you can do but God Almighty cannot do, and that thing is what? When you want to give punishment to someone, you can give punishment. You can banish the person from your kingdom. You can throw out that person from your kingdom if you are angry on someone. But God's kingdom is everywhere. But God Almighty cannot banish any person from his kingdom. This was the answer of Birbal to Akbar's question. Akbar smiled and he said that, yes, you are right, I believe on it. Akbar was so pleased with the answer that he forgave. He forgave means he stopped feeling angry to all the James in the court from their stupidity. Now students, you have to read this whole lesson 2 times, and whatever the new words I have given to you, you have to write down their meanings. In the next video, we will discuss the question answers of this lesson. Thank you.